Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Lost One podcast. Joining me today, I have a very special guest. He is the voice of Death Battle's Boomstick, the director of YouTube strategy at RoosterTeeth, and an Extra Life ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad James.
Hey, what's going on?
So,
Very excited to be here on the Sweet 16 episode of the show.
yeah, it's great having you. And let's try this again because the first time we tried this, I forgot to hit the turn on the audio. So we were recording, but with no sound.
I was going to let you just gloss that one over and but that's fine. If you want to out yourself, you can do it.
No. If you ever watch any of these podcast episodes, I always out myself because if I don't, I'm going to tell one of my co-hosts and then they're going to do it live.
They'll put you on blast.
Yeah. So, that's just the type of people they are. But, yeah, man. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dive into talk all things Cosmere. So if you don't know Chad at all, he is a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. So much so that he's actively recruiting other Sanderson fans where he can find them. And that's what happened with me is in Hangtime's channel, someone brought up fantasy. And I think it was you and Mistborn were talking Sanderson.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I love fantasy and I've never read any of Sanderson's content.
And then I was just like, come with me. I was like, I got you. Let's go. I will happily be your guide. It's happening more and more. I've led a lot of people through the Cosmere.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things because I love it. I love talking the Cosmere. I love talking fantasy. So anyone I can get, because there's also like so many cool things to talk about in the Cosmere, but it's like you unlock the topics the further you go and the more you read, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that like I have appreciated so much about guiding you through the Cosmere. Dude, you read so fast. It is insane. And it was the best for me. It was like the easiest like payoff, right? Because I was just like, you should read this, and you're like, oh, it's done. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, cool. Next one. And then you're just like, okay, that's done. And I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. So that's been super fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always been a fast reader, and I don't want to make this too much about me, but it is my podcast, so bear with me for a second. Sorry, but
No, that's fine.
When I was in school, especially in early elementary school, like I wasn't the type who I was bored in school, but not because it was difficult or because I didn't like it. It was because it was too easy, and so I actually had I used to get into trouble because I would be reading when my teacher was trying to teach. But then they would call on me and I would still know the answer. So eventually they just gave up and let me read in class. And yeah, didn't make a lot of friends that way. But hey, that was a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, it's a long time ago now. We all had our troubles in school.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, no, dude, you devoured the entire Cosmere. And especially when I was like, oh, here he goes down Stormlight, right? Like, this will take a what? Nope. I was like, dude, you beasted out Stormlight so fast and it's huge. So that was amazing because that's one thing, man, is like, so fantasy is like a huge part of like me, and like I pretty much exclusively read fantasy. I was like an avid reader as a kid. My mom used to joke around about how we would go to like the library and I would come out with like a wheelbarrow full of books basically, and then the next week those were all going back and another wheelbarrow was coming out. And then I just hit this point in my life, you get like really busy with like, job and family and kids and like everything. It's just like, oh, and I realized I was like, oh man, I don't read anymore.
Yeah.
And so then I got into audiobooks because we had actually had Audible had sponsored a Death Battle way back in the day. They were one of our early sponsors.
Yeah, I remember
so I was
that.
like, yeah, I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Even though I'm into voice work at the time, I was like, I don't really like audiobooks, but we'll see. Because it's like, there's that gateway, right? Like, once you get used to it, it's amazing. And oh my God, I'm so glad that I did that because it has allowed me to read. And like, dude, I'll fire up. I'll show you just how much like I have used used audiobooks because it allows me to like, dude, when like if I'm doing a chore,
yeah,
just put the audiobook on, then suddenly it's done way faster. That's also because I have ADHD. So when you focus on something, the stuff that you're doing in front of you magically happens.
Yeah.
And so it's like that, or like driving the car to work, or like a road trip, or like, anything like that. Or even like what's helped for me too is like my brain will race like a mile a minute when I'm trying to go to sleep. And so I'll just set like a sleep timer and put one earbud in and focus on that. And then, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so that was amazing. So what happened is like, okay, cool. like I reread some stuff. I was like, oh, it's been a while since I did like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and so I was like, so I redid that, and then I looked into some posthumously released Tolkien stuff, which was there's
Oh yeah, there's a
a
ton. There's like the Similarian or whatever you call it, right? Where
yes,
it's
that's the
like it's
expanded.
yeah,
There's I think
it's
it's called the Children of Húrin.
yeah,
And it's like Romeo and Juliet meets Old Boy. Like it, you got to get through a lot of really flowery. It's very Tolkien.
yeah, very Tolkien. I mean, I think a lot of people like if you want to summarize Tolkien's work, I always point them at like the sections with like Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings, and
Mhm.
it's because it's like very flowery, very exotic, and honestly, I think out of the whole like Lord of the Rings series, that was the hardest part for me to get through. I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I know Tom Bombadil has a particular place in the Tolkien fandom, shall we
And they
say?
cut him from the Hobbit movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
this is my listening time, which is 8 months and 2 days of
oh,
listening time.
wow.
Uh, so that's been amazing. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how I got into Sanderson and the Cosmere was, I was like, okay, cool. What's next now that I'm back, like getting into this? I'm like, what do I have left to devour? Because I was still reading Song of Ice and Fire, but
Mhm.
let's be real. I've been following Song of Ice and Fire since I was a child, basically,
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say we're still waiting.
Oh yeah, dude. I waited it was like 7 years for dance, and then or however long it was. God, it was so long. Anyway, so
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, all
yeah.
right, what's next? And I was like, Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan,
Yeah.
fantasy classic, like regarded as like one of the great works of fantasy. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So I did the whole Wheel of Time. Totally worth. I'm actually rereading it right now. I told myself I wouldn't ever because it was like good for one experience, but it's like very like this is the most interesting I've ever read. Oh my God, please do something. Please God, just do something. It's oh, here we go. Very interesting again. Oh, please God, just do something again. But then it pays off. It is amazing. But unfortunately, Jordan died
Yeah.
before he could finish the series.
Yeah.
So the last, I believe, book and a half, maybe 2.5. It's been a while.
Yeah,
But
Sanderson finished them, right?
it was done by Sanderson.
Yeah.
And what was so that's what introduced me to him. It was actually really, really cool. So apparently what had happened was like Jordan's wife was like, I need to find someone to finish this. And it's like it's a big deal. Right?
Yeah.
Like the Wheel of Time and Robert Jordan's works are one of the things that inspired Brandon Sanderson to become a fantasy writer, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, she found Sanderson and she reached out to him. And not only did he do a really good job tying up the books, but one thing I always appreciated was in the first book that he started writing on, he had an author's note that was basically like talking about how much he appreciates Jordan and how he's an inspiration. And he's like, I'm not even going to attempt to mimic his style. He's like, because it's Jordan and I don't think I could ever like do that, even though it's
Yeah.
Sanderson who's like a god. Anyway, but it's like, so he's like, I'm not even gonna attempt to do that. That's his thing. So I was asked to do this. It's a huge honor. I'm gonna do it with all of his notes and the way he wanted, but I'm gonna write it my way.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really cool. I should check out Sanderson as an author. Little did I know the rabbit hole. the,
You were Alice falling down the rabbit hole, and you ended up in the Cosmere instead of Wonderland.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's been man, and that's the thing too. So one of the reasons I really like guiding people for the Cosmere is because like I love for people to have a good experience, right?
Yeah.
Like in entertainment, whether that's, a television show, movies, like I some of my favorite movies are like if I can't or TV shows or if I didn't predict what was going to happen because I am so bad about that. Especially
Mhm.
after like working in production, I can tell the way they set up character shots sometimes and
Oh,
be like, "Oh, well that guy's going to be the villain or that guy's going to You know what I mean? Like so like I love those experiences that make you be like, "Whoa," they like blow your mind that you didn't see coming, and everything. And so I took on the Cosmere journey on my own. And I started with Stormlight because at the time that I looked it up, it was just like, if you're gonna read Sanderson, read Stormlight, right? It's like
yeah.
the big thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe I think only The Way of Kings was out
Mhm.
at the time. Maybe Words of Radiance had just come out or was close to. Anyway, and so I went through all of the Stormlight books that existed. Oh, definitely the two were out because I went through both of them. And then I was like, oh, what's some other Sanderson stuff? Because I loved it. I was like, oh, this is so well written, and like this is really cool, and like I love all the different characters, and the magic systems are dope, dude.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so then I was like, man, I was like, all right, well, what should I read next? So then I think I read Mistborn after that because I was like, oh, here's a complete trilogy, right? So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll read that, and then I think I read Elantris, and it was through the there's like I did the audiobook, and it was like I read like the special edition like re-release, and there's like a whole note from like his publisher and him talking about the Cosmere.
Hmm.
And that was what made me really be like, because he was basically like inspired by, he was like, what if I had a character that was the same character that appeared in every book,
Yeah.
regardless of what planet or time it was taking place? And that is like what spawned the Cosmere. And I was like, wait a minute. And then he's talking about how like, oh yeah, Hoyd appeared here and this, and I was like, oh my god, it all connects. So then I had to
Yeah.
like, I was like,
Yeah.
we then like trying to weave it all together and like getting the novellas and like stuff. And so when I read Warbreaker way after,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Warbreaker is like, it's like the Rosetta Stone of the
Yeah.
Cosmere crossovers, right? Like
Yeah.
that and Mistborn Secret Histories as well. But like basically I was just like, oh my god, I didn't even pick up on the end of book 2, and I'm trying to keep the spoiler free right now because we could talk about that. But I didn't even pick up on the end of book 2
Yeah.
until I reread Stormlight. Because after I started getting this, and then I reread Stormlight, and I went, "Oh my god!"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, "This has been sitting here the whole time," and that's why I was like, and that moment stuck with me, dude. And I was
Yeah.
like, anybody who I know is getting into the Cosmere, like I'm gonna help guide them so that they can have those payoff moments. Like I can't even imagine the experience I would have had the first time I read that one line at the ends of Words of Radiance, for you to be like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's here? How did what? Like, and
Yeah.
it's like it is just mind blowing, right? And so on, and that has kind of been my passion for like guiding people through. I want people to have those experiences,
And
and I was like, yeah, I was happy to hold your hand through all of that.
and let me tell you, it was an incredible ride. It really was, and I think it was made so much better because I had someone to share it with. Um, a little bit of my background before we really do a deep dive in, but like I also really love fantasy, but I took a very different path than you did. I was introduced, I think, Tolkien, just like you, so we kind of started in the same spot. But for me, I went from like Tolkien, and then I jumped to Pal Leone with Aragon,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I was also Harry Potter, which is a different style of fantasy, but still in the fantasy genre. And it was so those were kind of like my two like defining series as a teenager was Harry Potter. I was introduced to, I think, in like the fourth grade, after I'd already finished the Hobbit, because I'd started the Hobbit, and then I was introduced to the Lord of the Ring movies, um, right around that same time, because they were coming out in the early 2000s. And then after that, I kind of fell out of like books. So a lot of the core fantasy authors, whether it's like Wheel of Time or even Brandon Sanderson, like I didn't really know much about them, and I got more involved in like comic books, and superheroes were kind of like my big thing. So, and the MCU became kind of my passion, which
Yeah.
viewers of the podcast will know that we've already dedicated, like we've already covered phase 1 in the first like 11 episodes. So, we talk a lot about the MCU here. So it was interesting that, because I've always loved fantasy, and then of course the Aragon movie, which no one wants to admit exists, but it was awful. And the Hobbit films came out, which were cool, but it was
The
taking the
Hobbit films
smallest.
are garbage. They are absolute garbage.
Yeah, but you're taking the smallest book, and it's just filler.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on everything that's wrong with that. My favorite part, the only thing I'll just drop, my
Mhm.
absolute favorite part is just a shining example of everything that's wrong with the Hobbit movies,
Uh-huh.
is when it's the River Run. When
Oh, yeah, yeah.
they're all the dwarves are supposed to be imprisoned for months. They're supposed to be malnourished. It's been a hell, and it's been Bilbo hanging out, pilfering food, trying to figure out how to get them out of there. And then he finally comes up with the plan to pack them in the barrels. And it's supposed to be this like really gentle, like
Still,
breath of freedom
yeah.
after they have just been in captivity this whole long time.
Yeah, and that
And what
is not.
actually happens is you have Bombor in a barrel mech suit fighting a bunch of orcs that shouldn't be there, and then a bunch of elves, including Legolas, show up who shouldn't be there to fight the orcs that shouldn't be there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I hit that moment, I was like, oh, it's a different thing. It's
Yeah.
not the Hobbit. Like,
Yeah.
it's just its own thing.
Yeah. It you know, I could agree with you. Like I agree with you wholeheartedly, but and that will be another podcast. So that'll be just an excuse for me to invite you back on at a future date to talk Lord of the Rings in detail. But you know, it's funny because like, you know, you kind of talked earlier about, you know, how you like to keep your audiobooks on to kind of keep you focused. So I don't have ADHD, so I unfortunately can't relate to that. But one of the things about fantasy that I love is we talked beforehand before we started recording about my anxiety, and I also have clinical depression. So fantasy is like the perfect, along with superheroes, are like the two perfect tropes for me because there's that clearly defined like good and evil, and good fantasy though, which is what Sanderson does, and we'll dive real deep into this, can mix that and really play with those typical tropes,
Especially
right?
in Stormlight. Especially in
Yeah.
Stormlight.
So it's something that, you know, for me it's like fantasy was what I turned to when I was in my darkest mental state. So when you offered very graciously to guide me through the Cosmere, I was very happy because I don't connect with a lot of people with my fantasy fandom. The closest thing I got was Magic the Gathering, which, you know, has a story and actually released books. And in college, that was kind of the fantasy novels I was reading were the Magic books. But I'll just tell you, man, Wizards does not know what to do with their story. They, gosh,
Give it to Sanderson. He can write it. He'll write it in like a day. Who knows?
Oh man, among other things, and they tried that, but even that, like they tried to like give it out to other like fantasy authors, didn't work, and
Interesting.
Yeah, it was bad. And I'll just give you one example, and then we can move on. But there's a storyline with Jace, who's one of like the main characters, and he has been very divisive in the fandom for a long time because he's kind of a whiny baby. He's a mind mage, and all he really does is kind of like whine and complain and then get his brain shattered, like his mind shattered over and over again.
Gotcha.
And
those characters drive me nuts.
Yeah, and so then they, you know, introduced what is essentially Super Friends, not Justice League, Super Friends among the Planeswalkers, called the Gatewatch. They get absolutely stomped by the big bad, Nicol Bolas. And Jace, of course, ends up with this memory removed again. And they do this whole thing about, like, island survivability where Jace actually becomes, like, self-sufficient, more confident in himself, willing to, like, actually get involved in the fight instead of being, like, this nerdy, like, manipulative whiner. And they give him, like, a natural romantic like progression where he actually develops like a real healthy relationship with somebody,
and you're like, oh, finally they're doing the thing.
Yeah, and so it's like oh my god, they actually like figured out what to do with Jace. This is incredible. And there's a scene where at the end of this storyline, no spoilers, he reunites with some of his friends from the Gatewatch, and it's written like, hey, Gideon, I'm not dead! Like, it's really lighthearted and really into, like, how Jace's characterization and his character development was. And it's wonderful. It's wholesome, and you actually feel, like, empathy and happiness for Jace for once. Because he's not, like, involved in a toxic relationship or getting his mind wiped.
You went on the journey,
Yeah. So, then in the very next, like, corresponding, you know, story kind of explaining what Gideon and Liliana, who are the two he reunites with in this scene, are up to, they rewrite that same scene, and he's back to how he was before his character development. This know-it-all, like, snotty, like, oh yeah, I totally did this, there's a lot going on that you need to know about, blah, 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 and then he disappears again. It's like, dude, what are you doing? And yeah, as it turned out, it was because I guess they had some kind of, like, creative overview at Wizards, so
they were like, that's not Jace. This is Jace. He needs to act like that, right?
From my understanding, is the author that they hired to do this, and she did a good job, but she had never read any of the previous stories, so she didn't know what was happening. I was like, okay.
And that was good, apparently.
No,
The second one that
it
came
was
in.
the
Oh,
second one.
I see
So
what you're
she
saying.
only had older stuff to look at, and so
Right.
she wrote Chase that way, and the fandom was like, no, why?
Yeah, oh, no.
So yeah, there was a whole bunch of missteps, but that's a whole nother podcast. But
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's very dissimilar what the show Game of Thrones did with Jaime Lannister. They threw his entire character building arc away in one single scene.
yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, and that's the worst. Like, to me, that's one of the worst like tropes in any type of production, whether it's like movie or book, is when we have to move the plot along, so let's have this character do something that undermines everything else the character has done up until this point.
Yep. And that's the great thing about Sanderson is
Yeah,
he does not do that. He like man, he maps all that stuff out and he's open and to learn. And like, you talked about how, we brought up that in like Stormlight, especially like he tackles like, some issues like multiple personality disorder.
yeah,
And for that specifically, he had some fans reach out and they're like, hey dude, like love your work, but like, hey, I have multiple personality disorder and that's not how this quite works. And so like he hired a consultant.
yeah.
It's like, it's like a consultant so that he can write that better and better represent that character. He cares so much about his worlds and his characters and his fans. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, and you can tell. So, I just want to give a spoiler warning to everyone who's watching or listening. If you are a Sanderson fan, we're about to do a deep dive into the Cosmere here. We're going to talk. We will probably veer into spoiler territory. Maybe not on purpose, maybe on purpose. But I just want to give everyone like a fair warning. We are going to talk about a lot of Cosmere stuff. So, strap on in, and we're going to do a deep dive. So, Chad, where should we begin? I mean, should we talk with Hoyd or?
Oh man, I don't know. Where do you? I'm actually really curious because we've chatted a little bit over like DMs and stuff, but this is our first time getting to speak in person about it. And again, this is one of the reasons I love helping people through Cosmere. Is I want them to have a great experience. Then two, I selfishly want to talk about it. So, we might, if we want to get crazy spoiler heavy, we might end on the last thing that I got to blow your mind with when
Sure.
we.
Sure.
But no, I'm curious. I want to know what you want to talk about, man. What's been your experience like going through the Cosmere and all of that?
So, let me first explain what you did for me, because we've talked about how you've been a guide. Like, the Cosmere right now is composed of several series, some of which are still ongoing. I believe Mistborn Era 2 is about to release its final book in like not even a month. So I think it'll be like weeks by the time this episode actually, releases. But I'm so excited. I already have a pre-order too, by the way. So thanks for that, Chad.
No problem. Welcome to the addiction.
And yeah, it's for me, I think Stormlight is the gold standard. Out of his whole series, it's probably my favorite, but I definitely have a soft spot for Mistborn Era 1. And surprisingly, I actually really enjoyed Elantris, which I know in some of our conversations you had said it's not your favorite out of his works.
It's not my favorite. And because I don't think he had really figured out writing for characters. This is his first book.
Yeah.
Out of like college, right? Like I think he started it in college. So and that's all, I don't know. It's just for me. And also the other thing too is the audiobook, it's not narrated by the same people who have done the other ones, and the narrator's not super great. Sorry.
Yeah.
But like it's the whole Wraithen and his lackey dynamic that just it's so apparent, and it's just like this guy's clearly giving you all the signs that he will betray you.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, he's a smart and ruthless person. He's like, I think he might betray me, but I'll give him another chance. He betrays him. Okay, you betrayed me a little bit, but I'll give you another chance. And I'm like, what are you doing? This isn't...
Yeah.
Like, I get that you're trying to figure it all out, but it's like, you know what's happening. You know what this dude is doing. And like, it's so much time is spent on that conflict. I love all the stuff that happens inside of Elantris, in the wall. But
outside of it, it's funny too that you mentioned that relationship specifically with like this guy is a slime ball and he's going to betray you. They do that. He does that a lot better in Stormlight with Delinar and Sadeas.
Yeah. So Dalinar, yeah, Dalinar
Yeah,
and Sadeas, yeah,
yeah,
that too. Uh, and then also this gets spoilery, but we warned you.
yeah. We did. So go for it.
Also Moash.
Yeah, also Moash. Although the
Moash
Moash,
makes you feel, dude. Oh,
yeah,
that one.
the Moash one though is a much longer burn.
Right.
Because like they start off hostile, then they eventually become really good friends. And again, this is spoilers, but we're getting into the point where like Kaladin literally gives him the shard plate that Adolin offers for him. And so they have that much of a friendship and a relationship, and the way that they kind of fall apart is, I think, really well written, and it's really well done, because it is in many ways that kind of classical like your worst enemy from your best friend type thing. And it's kind of what I think. It was a longer burn of that same relationship where it's like, that Moash has some darkness in him. It's hinted at multiple times. There's lots of foreshadowing, and it's but it's like, man, when you get to that payoff though, it hurts, especially
Yeah.
because Moash doesn't actually fight Kaladin for real at the time.
No, he doesn't. He
He
just.
he he turns and runs.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
he
yeah.
he turns and runs, and so that clash is still going to happen at some point, maybe.
Oh, I know, yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. Everybody's hyped up. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
off the next. I don't know. We'll see. It's gonna happen. You know, it will.
but
But yeah, like you were saying with Sadeas and Dalinar. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing is like they give you enough. He gives you enough breadcrumbs in that to
yeah,
be like, I can believe it. Like because that's the other thing too. Like the thing about like Hrathen is like known as like he's ruthless. He's like
yeah,
a
yeah,
ruthless
yeah,
super priest, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and he's here to like raise the like I will convert them all, and save their souls, or the others will burn, or whatever. Right? It's like he's
yeah,
and this, but whereas like Dalinar in that scenario is like Dalinar is literally like the epitome of honor. Like
yeah,
he has fucked his life up for honor,
yeah,
right? In so many ways. And so it's like, so you get why he'd still be like, I'll believe that Sadeas will be the honorable thing because I bettered myself and I'm trying to better other people. And then the way Sadeas interacts, it
yeah.
is a little sneaky, but he's like at times genuine and they used to be friends and he taught, it's like
Yeah,
you can absolutely see that one. So
yeah, and that I think is what was missing from from Elantris. And obviously, again, we talked, this was Sanderson's like first novel, so like I'm willing to excuse a lot, but I actually enjoyed that adversarial relationship in Elantris, like the back and forth. And it's something that for me, it's just I don't know. There's something really raw about Elantris that I really liked. I really liked the magic system. I liked how it all came together at the end, and I liked the mystery aspect of it, which, isn't something that I think has been as prevalent in his later works. But I think it was way better, I think, than I was expecting it to, because you had told me like, oh, it's not really like my favorite out of them all, and
yeah.
so I guess, I don't know, maybe you did me a favor, because I went in like not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, and I walked out liking it a lot, actually.
Well, there
So
you go.
yeah,
Perfect.
but
Just get set those lower. I mean, it's still Sanderson though. That's my thing.
yeah,
It's like it's not a bad book at all.
no,
I'm just
no,
like I compare it to the rest of the Cosmere, and I'm like
yeah, yeah, and admit, like, compared to his writing later, the only book I feel that is comparable in some way is the very first Mistborn book. And the only reason I say that is because, and I think Sanderson has even said this in like interviews, that he didn't really know how to write Vin at first, and it's pretty obvious, at least initially. He gets a whole heck of a lot better as it goes on.
Let me.
Um,
You just touched on something. Oh god. Okay. I
uh
have two different friends. One is Emily,
huh.
from Plague Pals, who
Yes.
have said that they tried to read Sanderson and they read the first Mistborn book and they just didn't like the way Vin was written. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, you don't know what you're missing. I was
Hmm.
like, Mistborn is 3 books. It
Yeah.
is 3 books.
Yeah.
Get the whole picture. I promise you, like, please. And then like I've gotten Emily at least to admit to go back and like she's rereading 1 and I'm like, just you have to read 2 at least. Like I was
Yeah.
like, you're gonna like just please. because that's the thing. It's like I get it, but it's also like that book book one is kind of about Vin. I mean, it
Yeah,
is, but it's also
it's
the whole
about
thing was to be like, what if he built up this character in Kelsier
yeah,
and then pulled the rug out from under both the audience and Vin, the actual real protagonist, right? So it's like we know
yeah.
we're following Vin, we know she's going to be a big deal, but you are so not expecting
What
what happens
happens?
with Kelsier in
Yeah,
book one,
yeah,
and it's like, whoa. And so that's the thing is like, I don't know what it is about like the people who got that and they were just like, I didn't like the way Vin was written, and now they think that like, I think it's maybe they're like, oh, I really loved Kelsier, he was
yeah.
written way better than Vin and whatever, and now he's gone, oh F this, and it's like, no,
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 no, no,
that's the
no.
thing
Yeah,
that allows it to get really, really good.
yeah. And that's the thing is like, as I kind of said, is that the way he writes Vin in, I think it's Well of Ascension is book 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in Well of Ascension is way, way, way better than in book 1. There's a notable difference, and Sanderson is, as you said, like if he doesn't do something right and he gets feedback that it's like maybe this could have been better, he's going to hire a consultant, he's going to do research, he's going to improve. And that's the thing that I think if I could summarize kind of my experience with Sanderson is the later into his writing career that I've gotten, the better he has gotten. And it's hard to believe because he sets the bar so high with
Mm-hmm.
Mistborn, like with the full trilogy. And again, while there's problems with how Vin's written, like Kelsier is really well done in book 1,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of other characters in book 1 that are really interesting and have very fun dynamics. But I mean, the whole story is about Vin and Kelsier, and
Yep.
yeah, and then something you alluded to, because I just want to kind of toss this term out there, but I think you referred to the endings of his books as the
Oh, the
Sanders
Sanderstorm.
Storm. Yeah,
Yeah, the Sanderstorm.
and you get that a lot. Like in pretty much every book, I found that there was a whoa type moment. Even in Elantris, and it wasn't as prevalent there, but it was. It was still like a okay. I'm interested to see how all this comes together, and he still
Yeah,
does that.
he's very good at doing that on a book level, but he's extra good at doing that on like a series level,
Oh
right? Like
man,
that's the thing is like one of the craziest like Sanderstorms is book 3 is the Hero of Ages
yes.
from Mistborn.
Oh
That
man,
is the thing that I'm like, that's why I'm like, you guys, you have to read it. You have to read it because you don't understand that all of these little kernels and webs and things, and he's given you all the hints. And I told you, I'm so good
yeah,
about figuring stuff out. And when you get that thing dropped on you, it was just like, oh my God, he said it so clearly. Don't trust anything, not
yeah,
written in it. And you're like, and
yeah,
then the way it ties into other characters with, like Marsh and everything and says it and this and this and
yeah.
then you're just like, oh, like, and it's like, and it all like goes crazy to this insane, like all of the threads coming together and your brain is exploding. And then you find out that if you read Secret Histories,
Yeah,
the novella, there's actually a whole nother thing happening behind the scenes in a different realm, and you're just like, what the
it's so crazy because I'm rereading. I reread Mistborn 1 through 3 not that long ago. In
Have you read that
preparation.
series probably like 4 or 5 times? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been going through it in preparation for the Lost Metal, which I think is the conclusion of Mistborn
The
Era
Wax and
2.
Wane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wax and Wane. And I'm actually right now. I have it right here. I'm through book 3 of Stormlight Archive, so I'm back on to Oathbringer, and I just finished Radiance the other day and Way of Kings like a week ago, and I'm sitting
You see
here.
how fast he reads? Anyone watching? It's insane. Anyway.
But and something I've noticed too is like I went in and after I finished pretty much all the published work of the Cosmere, I explored the Coppermind and read through some of his interviews and stuff like that. But something I just want to tie in is that in one of the things that comes together at the conclusion of Mistborn Era 1 is a little thing that is mentioned a million freaking times and you never really think about it even after it's explained to you in book 3 like what this is. It's so subtle and so, but it's always there, and the detail is incredible. And then there's this big payoff at the end of Hero of Ages.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's the fact that he can rub your nose in that so much, and then you're still surprised, and then you just go, "Oh, you bastard!" Like,
no, that is exactly my reaction. Is I went, "Son of a," and I'm doing that again, rereading Stormlight.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sitting here like there's something that happens in Stormlight 1, okay, with the king, right? Elokar, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Elokar.
And it's played off as he's being paranoid. Reading it through the second time, having the knowledge I do after finishing Rhythm of War, which is the fourth and, as of now, the most recent addition to Stormlight, I went and looked at that and I compared it to what happened to another character, and I was like, this SOB was dropping this hint that will take place 2 full books later, 2,400 plus pages later, and he is dropping it in like the middle of the first book. And I was just like, how did I not catch this last time? And the answer is I didn't know enough about the magic system and how it worked at the time.
Right.
But rereading it a second time, it's actually been better than the first read through. Because now I'm coming in with all this context of like how the system works. So now I know what to look for. And oh my gosh, it's like, if there's something like subtle, I don't want to like oversell this, but if there's like something subtle and it is brought up probably like, I would say 3 or 4 times, keep an eye on it. Because more often than not, it will come into play in some way, shape, and or form later.
Yep. And then that's the thing too, is like, ideally, like, to get the best experience for the first time for most Cosmere books, you have already read the whole Cosmere, so that's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's one of the reasons that I like to help guide people, because like Sanderson has his recommended way to read the Cosmere.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he is the author. He will trump me. Yeah. I have my own recommended way to read the Cosmere, which is the path I sent you on, and that's not thinking of it from like just the Cosmere's thing. I'm also thinking of it like, I want you to get introduced to this book at this point because it's really good. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this is like he's really good at this point, right? So you could start here or you could start here, but then you're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to do this, and, you know. And then it's like, and it's mainly the starting points that like, I disagree a little bit on, just because I want people to be able to get into Stormlight a little bit earlier, but I do make them pause and read Warbreaker, which, by the way, Warbreaker is one of my absolute favorite Cosmere books. It was described to me, like, when I was looking it up and I was reading it, I was like, okay, what else do I have? And it's like, oh, it's a Cosmere book, great. And it was like, it's a romance novel. It's like it's like a romance fantasy. And I was like, I'll read it because it's Cosmere book. And then I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. It's very well done. And you know, I will just say, because you know, I don't want to spoil too much of Professor Chad James's curriculum.
You want to see something pretty?
Oh yes, I absolutely want to see something pretty. Can you move it a little closer to your face?
Oh yeah.
Thanks. Sorry.
No worries.
Oh my gosh.
This is one of the coolest gifts that I have ever gotten. It is, and my wife got it for me, and it is the leather-bound Warbreaker. And one of the reasons that I love it so much is
big shout out to April.
Yeah, not only is it signed by Sanderson, but because the magic system involves colors.
Yes.
It is gorgeous.
Oh,
the
my
artwork
gosh.
is like absolutely incredible.
I am like steaming in jealousy right now.
Dude,
that is
if there's one leather bound that you could ever pick up, it is Warbreaker. It is so gorgeous. Full art on all that stuff, right? And then also I'll show you the beginning of a paragraph. So there it is, signed by Sanderson, which is crazy to me.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And then so the beginning of every chapter. Oh, look, you get full maps.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have not talked about this.
Look at this. This is every chapter has its own custom illustration to start the chapter off.
I'm so jealous. I'm so
This is
jealous.
legitimately like a prize position. I get scared. I don't like to touch this
Yeah,
to like
yeah.
put my finger oils on it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so like, if there's one thing you gotta know about me, Chad, I am a map slut. I
oh really?
love fantasy maps. So I I don't really want to brag too much, but I used to draw a lot. I've had to really kind of cut back and limit because I have pretty bad carpal tunnel in my right hand.
Oh, that sucks,
But
dude.
yeah, it's a life of video games and drawing and writing. So
Yep.
yeah, and typing. And now my career's in IT. So, but yeah, it's. But I used to love drawing fantasy maps, and I drew tons of them. So every time I see a fantasy map, I'm just like, yay! I get so
That's awesome.
excited.
So what's so funny for me is like I always like to see them, but I have to get super ADHD brain.
Mhm.
There's something about like if I'm not like literally seeing it as it's happening, you know what I mean? Like if I'm not seeing
Yeah.
the people move from here to here, like even though I know that this is Southwest, it doesn't ever connect because like I'm so focused on the characters and the stories, and I know there are people like you who could probably you're getting the picture of the world, knowing where they're going, and that map is forming. And for me, I'm just like it's all everywhere.
So
We live in the now.
so it's funny you say that, but I actually I don't know what it's called, but I don't see images in my head.
Oh really?
Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah, I'm a very paradoxical person, as I'm sure you'll learn. I love art and I love to draw, but I can't picture it. I don't see images. So for me, like, and this is a big part of the reason why like I've never tried to go professional or anything is because I have to have a reference. I have to have a reference I can look at visually, like, and compare side by side.
Gotcha.
So when you're talking about that, like I actually can relate in a way because like I can't see anything. So I'm like flipping back, like in Stormlight, for example. Stormlight, like the world is Roshar is huge. It's huge and it covers so
Right.
much. I have to like if they're like talking about a new location, I have to go back and like open up the,
Look
the
at the
front of
map.
the page and then look at the map and go, okay, that's where they are. Because like yeah, I get the cardinal directions. So it's like, yeah, the high storms go like, this way, right? And
Right.
then they end in Shinovar, they go east to west and they end
Mhm.
this way. So I'm like, I get that. But I'm like, I can't imagine things. So like when I see art, for example, like on the Coppermine, there's all this fan art that's posted there, like a bunch of the
Yeah.
characters and locations. So for the first time, I'm actually getting to see like a completed picture because yes, I have the descriptions, but it doesn't come together like as an image in my head. So when I saw that fan art, like with the Coppermine, that was like an extra treasure for me because I'm like, oh my god, this is what they look like. Like,
Yeah. And that's the other thing too about like do not go to the copper mine until
no,
you've
no,
read the
no,
entire Cosmere.
do
But it
not.
is like an extra book almost, right? That you
Yeah,
get to enjoy. Once you're done, it's like, oh, now I get to see all the little theories and everything that people have connected and whatever.
yeah, and there's so much too. Like, for example, we haven't really talked about like outside of the books, but like the greater Cosmere stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on kind of in the background outside of the main story, and the
Mhm.
information's there, but you have to piece it together. You have to take it out and then like put it together.
Oh
Um, uh,
yeah, like oh my god, all the letters from
yeah,
Stormlight,
that
and
is
like
exactly what I was just gonna say. Was
yeah.
like the letters in Stormlight, which if you've read, like you can recognize kind of some of them, but there's others like I'm like, oh, I don't know who this is. I have no idea like what this is or who this is referring
Right.
to.
Yeah, because some letters don't even tell you who they're being written to.
Yeah,
You're like jumping into like a piece of a letter, right? And you're
yeah,
like, okay, hold on.
yeah,
Wait, this sounds like it's still
yeah,
Sazed. Okay, this is Sazed, and he's clearly talking to yeah, he's Hoy. Okay, this is talking to
yeah,
Hoy.
yeah.
You're like sitting
He's
there, you're
talking to
trying,
Hoyd.
and then you're like, wait a minute, this is another piece from like the other letter that I got, and where
Yeah,
he had said that this person is the Lord of whatever, and now they're calling him this person. Oh my God, this person is this person. Ah,
yeah,
like
yeah, and then you on top of it because like for a very oversimplified breakdown of the Cosmere is essentially there was this being and a
Adonalcium. We can
yeah.
say it. It's okay.
I wasn't gonna say because I can't pronounce it. So
That one's
at
not super spoilery.
Adolnasium or
Adonalcium.
Adonalcium. Okay, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
That's gonna take me like 7 more tries to remember, but please keep correcting me because I will screw
No,
it
it's
up.
all good.
And basically something happened, and it was split into 16 shards, and these shards basically act as gods in a lot of the books.
Dragon Balled out into the universe,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
Like,
Only instead of 7, there's 16 of them, and
right.
a lot of the overarching conflicts are either due to or directly related in some way to the shards. Um, whether it's Mistborn, there's 2 of them that are involved there. Stormlight has 3 so far that we know of, and I want to leave that open because there's hints.
Yeah.
Then you have Warbreaker, which has 1, and then there's all these other like background information, like Stormlight, for example. One of the shards has been involved, shall we say, with like at least 3 other shards that are
Right.
only mentioned in passing by the and I
Letters.
believe that in the letters they don't even refer to them by their like powers, by their shard names. They're referred to by the holders' names.
Right, the holders' names. Yeah,
Yeah,
the people that are invested. And
which
it's just
adds
like,
more confusion because
yeah,
sometimes. So, like, just as an example, one of the shards is honor. Okay,
yeah, and by the way, so the shards are all like different aspects of like what would make up a person or a being, right?
Yeah.
But that's the other thing that's super cool. That's like very interesting because you would expect it to be like anger,
Yeah.
sadness.
No,
like,
no,
whatever.
they're very fancy names. So
Right.
you have, instead of like anger, you have odium.
Right.
Instead of destruction, you have ruin.
Ruin.
Instead of
Peace or
peace,
happiness, preservation,
tranquility,
maybe? I don't
maybe
know.
you have preservation.
But then we've got cultivation,
Yeah.
which is
Cultivation,
some growing
and
stuff.
Autonomy, and endowment. So it's all like very fancy names. So there's a point, and at the end of the second Stormlight archive with Hoyt, and he's talking to Jasna, and minor spoilers, by the way. And he Jasna is an atheist and is also asexual. 2 things I can relate to. So thank you, Sanderson. Appreciate you, bud.
And heads up, this is one thing. Just want to, because a lot of people read the books. Like one thing to correct, because I'm pretty sure this is correct. It's Yasna. It's
one Yasna. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the JY situations.
I really, really appreciate that, Chad, because I've not listened to the audiobooks, and I haven't really looked at a lot of the pronunciation. So, like, anytime, interrupt me, correct me, please.
Yeah, I got you.
I like getting it right, but like if you've ever been to my stream, I butcher even the easiest names. I'm almost as bad as Grayson.
No, I totally get it. But you said you were interested in, like, you wanted to know,
Yeah.
and so like I was just tossing it out there. Yeah.
No, absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I love
yeah.
that. Yes, no Hoyt interaction.
Yeah. Oh, I love it too. And their relationship is extremely fascinating as it develops. But Yasna is referring to her lack of belief in a god, which at this point everyone refers to as honor, is the Almighty. And Hoyd, just in his way, because he does this, is like Tanavast was a fine enough fellow, but he was not God. He bought me drinks one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that for me, I was like, who the hell is he referring to? Who the fuck is Tanavast? And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's the shard. And this was before I really did my deep dive on the Cosmere, because that's something that like I've always been really impressed with in Sanderson, is that all this is going on in the background, and Mistborn Secret History is a great example of this, right? With like the forces that are moving behind the scenes, but they're never really at the forefront per se. 1 or 2 of them might be, but not always, and certainly not for like the whole trilogy. So,
I mean, just the fact that this is Titanic spoiler coming up, y'all. Heads up.
So,
this is your final warning.
Yeah, final warning. Like, if you haven't already, like,
yeah,
hey, heads
this
up.
This is the big one. The fact that Kelsier has cheated death and has found a way to start a Cosmere-wide crime syndicate that has far-reaching impact on the other Cosmere novels is one of the most in-character and yet also mind-blowing things. Like,
I mean, and the best part, if I can just throw in, is that you even get hints of that in Mistborn. Like throughout the
Yeah.
Mistborn trilogy, like there is after book one, where he dies, kinda. You can see reading back his influence, and there's a lot of questions. Like there's one question, again, since we're in major spoiler territory, we're just going to go in, but like preservation dies in the middle of book 3 of Mistborn Era 1, and
Somebody has to have its power.
yeah,
That's the thing. It has to go to somebody.
It's mentioned multiple times, and it's even called out in one of the notes. Like the very like next chapter opens up with like a letter that I think Sazed or Sezed, how do you pronounce his name, Chad? Sazed.
Yep.
Missed it twice.
It's Sazed for short, so you're good.
Sazed, but Sazed, he's writing he's writing like these letters at the top of every chapter, right? To lead in. And it says if he had known that he was in the presence of a dying god, so he confirms it that he died like immediately. So it's not that big of a spoiler, but the whole argument is like he was the only counterbalance to Ruin, who's this all-powerful force. So it's like, why hasn't Ruin, like when Preservation died, just
done it, just swept it all? Yeah, like what happened?
Why didn't he just wipe out the entirety of the of the planet? Right, that's what he was planning to do.
Think about it the first time you're reading it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much other drama and things going on that you're focused on.
But
oh, there you go. No, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I did, but in fairness, you also kind of dropped a hint that I should be looking, about like the Cosmere. So I kind of went in with like at least there's something bigger at play here, and I always kept that at the forefront. But a lot of readers, to your point, would not.
Mm-hmm.
And it is explained. Secret History is basically explained that before Preservation's power goes to Vin, Kelsier held on to it for her to protect it. And it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like, it was one of those unexplained things that, like, I was like, why didn't Ruin just blow up the planet? That's what he wanted to do. And no, it was like, no, he had someone who was opposing him.
The
not
whole
very
time,
effectively,
secretly in the background in a novella you haven't read yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy. And, you talked about how Warbreaker is, an essential, but it's the same type of things. It's like there's a force moving on in the background that you never really feel, but there's hints dropped throughout the whole book about it. And it's like, well, where did this stuff come from? How did this happen? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, a lot of that isn't necessarily explicitly addressed, but they drop a lot of hints.
So, they really love to admire those statues a lot, don't they? He sure loves to drop description of these statues all the time, and then at the end you're like, damn you, Sanderson, once again, you rubbed my nose in it.
Rule of 3, guys. If they look at something or mention something more than 3 times, it's probably important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, it's so crazy to me because, like, Sanderson is a genius. He really is.
Oh, yeah.
And
how does he do it so much?
And I have so much respect for him too, because like I admired him as a writer, but then with your encouragement, I read some of his interviews, and then I was also privy to take part in AMA with Sanderson. He didn't answer one of my questions, but I got to read all his responses live, and I think I actually DM'd you about that.
Yeah,
and someone asked a question. Sanderson teaches, it's at a university that's very conservative.
Yeah, Sanderson's Mormon.
He's Mormon.
I believe he's out in like at Utah. I believe he's in Utah.
Yeah, I can't remember what, but he's a professor of writing there as well. So like he does like writing workshops and all this other stuff. And someone asked him a really deep question, and it was something along the lines of like, how can you work in this environment where the people you work with and the area you are and your own members of your own faith treat individuals like Yasna, right? Like Shallan, and for those who don't know, asexuals, atheists, LGBTQA members, right? With such disdain. And that you write them so well in your books. And his response really is what solidified my respect for him as not just a writer, which I think we've already established, but as a person. because it was a very thoughtful response. And he said, it was essentially along the lines, I'm really oversimplifying this, but it was, if I can continue to present these individuals, make them human, make people realize, that they matter and that this is real, I'm in the best position to do that, because I want to try to convert all of them to see that, this way, and that it's not mutually exclusive. Like, your faith does not mutually exclude treating these other people like they're people. And, Chad, I know you're very outspoken about this. So am I. To hear something like that, such a unequivocally pro LGBTQA plus, from someone who is quite literally in the lion's den of
super Mormon.
of a location that doesn't necessarily have the best history treating that community well.
Mm-hmm.
And just how he was like, I feel this is the best place I can be to make the biggest difference on this issue.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting right here in this very chair with Reddit on one end and probably like Hang Time or another channel open on another. And I just sat back and went, I have to meet this man. Once in my life, I
dude, that's on my list.
Man.
It's on my list, dude. He was the closest. He did like a book signing in Houston at one point, but then I think I had to go to Dallas that same weekend. I was like, no. Like, dude, I don't geek out. Like, all right, super. Like, I'm very fortunate in what I do for a living. I've met like a lot of like celebrities and things like that. I don't really like geek out, and also like I'm in that space, so like I'm happy to meet people and stuff. But it's like it's not. I don't know. It's like I'm kind of it's more normal than normal.
Than, you don't buy into the whole like super fandom awestruck thing easily.
Like I'll go across somebody, actually literally like a week or 2 weeks ago, I met Dallin, who's the lead singer of IDK How But They Found Me, formerly from Panic at the Disco. And I was just like, hey man, just want to say like great set tonight, really love your work. And he's just like, oh thanks man, like it was a cool piece.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
there's a little humble brag from Chad right there, guys. But,
yeah, a little bit. No, dude. But there are like two people, literally two people that I would like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like I would like, I really want to meet them and like geek out and be like, oh, you changed my life.
Yeah.
And that is Brandon Sanderson, and then Greg Graffin, who's the lead singer of Bad Religion, who also has a PhD and teaches out in California.
There we go. Maybe I'll go meet him just to make you jealous of me for something, huh?
Oh yeah, you want to, dude? We should talk about like Greg, dude, crazy. Anyway,
I would love to. I really would.
Super cool, but yeah, dude, I hear you, man. Like I'm like that one's on my list.
Yeah.
Even just for the quick little like. The closest I ever got was he liked a tweet. It was from one of the tattoos. Both my tattoos are Cosmere, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it was from one of the tattoos. Like it was like tweeted out or something. It was like because we did it for charity, and so like he had like liked it or whatever. And I'm just like,
yeah.
But I also have so many people that tag him and then like also tag me and be like, Chad got me into the Cosmere. Like what should I read next? And I'm like, come on, Brandon, just say hi.
Yeah, right. Man, it's crazy because like it's funny because I think that's something you and I have in common a little bit, but I think you handle it way better than I do because like something I think is very apparent. I'm very nervous, as I mentioned. I suffer from anxiety, and insecurity has always been kind of like my fatal like character flaw. It really is, and I learned pretty early on, not to really idolize anybody. I guess I've always been a bit of a cynic. But I have like 3 people that I really want to meet, and it's for very similar reasons to you. It's like, if I met someone, I do my best to, be casual with them. Like this is our first interaction, and I hope I've been okay, and not like, oh my god, it's Chad James. but it is something that you kept a dude. I could go back there at DMs the Cosmere and it's just like like if it's not too much trouble and like oh thanks so much and like oh hey sorry to bother you and I'm like dude it's fine I want to do this. Well, so I'm just gonna let you know that's how I am with everybody. Like I really am. I'm just
playing with you, man.
Yeah, no, he's not wrong. Like he's not wrong. I'm getting called out here, and Shoshima's not even here to do it, man. But Yeah, it's just I'm like that with everybody, but it's like, for me it's like Weird Al Yankovic would be number one for me.
That'd be super cool.
Mick Foley, and who's for those who don't know, WWF wrestler, WWE legend, all around great guy, and Brandon Sanderson is now like on that list. And I'm just like, man, I would really just like to say thank you because, yeah, I mean, there's very few people in my life that I feel really made a huge positive impact and then stayed positive, like haven't
Right.
disappointed me in some way. And
Right.
every interview I read with Sanderson, like I just get more respect for him.
He's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's great. So again, thank you so much for introducing me.
Yeah, of course. And also, one of my favorite things that came from him being Mormon, is that, so for those that don't know, Church of Latter-day Saints and Mormonism don't really like the whole swearing thing.
No, they don't.
Uh, and so that has led to actually a very fun game in the Cosmere, and that is that every planet and sometimes different cities or regions or whatever,
Yeah.
they get their own swear language, and it's actually the easiest way for you to spot a world hopper. A world
Yes.
hopper is somebody who has transferred between different worlds, different times, like to be like so like it's the number one way. And I
Yeah.
think I told you that too. I was like, you
Yes,
need
you
to
did.
watch out for the swearing. I was like, watch out for the swearing. That's how. So, for example, I was showing off the book earlier, and it was like colors are very involved.
Yes.
People from that world will be like, colors. They'll use it
Yeah.
as a swear, right? Like,
Yeah.
for
There's
example,
there's one.
Swordmaster Zyle.
I was about to say there's
Yeah.
one character in Stormlight who like every time he gets frustrated, which is pretty much every time someone interacts with him.
People don't have adequate language.
Yeah,
For
he refers to something with color in it. It's not a colors, but it's like a ox of the green like moon or something like that. I think is one of his swears or something like that. But it's like like all of his like swears. Then he goes like darn language doesn't have the you can't swear properly in it or something like that.
Yeah. In your language, you don't, because Kaladin's like, what?
Yeah. And then there's another one from Elantris who appears, and this is how because Chad and I kind of had this game while I was reading through the Cosmere for the first time, and it was like how many world Chad would ask me
Who'd
like
you spot?
how many world hoppers did you spot, and I think the one I got that that I don't know if you were expecting me to, but like again it's hard to imply diction between text, but
Sure.
was the guy from Elantris, because I didn't know it at the time, but he ended every sentence with the word friend.
Yeah,
And
which one? Sorry,
I can't think of his name, but he appears. He's one of the 7 Shard members going after Hoyd in
oh yeah, okay,
the intermission at the Pure Lake,
Gotcha.
along with the guard and
Dude, oh my god, it's been so long since I thought about what's going on with the people at the Pure Lake and stuff.
Yeah, there's 3 world hoppers in this scenario. Again, we've already given you spoilers, so sorry. But there's 3 world hoppers. All 3 of them are world hoppers. All 3 of them are from previous Sanderson works. And at the time when I read Stormlight 2, I hadn't read Elantris yet. But I picked up him as a world hopper because of the way he spoke. And he had a very weird dialect.
Yeah.
And he would literally end every sentence with friend. And he does that in Elantris too, but it's a unique word. And it's translated in Stormlight. But I can't think of his name, but he's like the right-hand man in Elantris.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, why am I blanking on his
name?
I'm
like totally blanking on his name, but he's really fun. He's a fun character, but like yeah, he literally like ends every sentence with like hey, like you should do this, friend, or you should do this, friend.
Right.
And then it's the other 2 are, one guy is from the graphic novel that's escaping me.
White Sand?
White Sand, thank you. And the other one is the Church of the Survivor member. He's the guard that Kelsier uses to set an example in Mistborn 1. And then in Mistborn 2, he becomes like this devout Church of the Survivor member and preaches.
Oh yeah.
And he's one of the suspects in that ongoing subplot.
Dude, this is like killing me that I can't think of this character's name.
Anyway. Yeah. But
there's another Elantrian in Stormlight, but it's very brief. That's what I was asking. When they first go into the cognitive realm, and they
yeah,
stop at the lighthouse, the
yeah,
guy's like,
he's the
"Merciful
keeper, right?
Domai," yeah,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, he's the keeper. Yeah, yeah, I remember him too. And
But that's the thing is like, so I love that like I like originated because like so like Brandon will work in every now and then you get a dam
yeah,
every
it's
now and
very
then, right?
rare. It does happen. I think
But
the
it's
closest is damnation.
damnation.
That's like
Yeah,
I think the ongoing like recurring like bad word in Stormlight because that's basically their version of hell.
right.
So yeah, and the only reason that sticks out to me is because in Oathbringer I just finished uh, reading Dalinar's
Dalinar.
first attempt to recruit all the kings together, and
Mm.
in true fashion he doesn't succeed and starts swearing in his own way, which in Stormlight they use the heralds' names a lot for most of their
Collect,
swears.
but it's
Yeah,
Storm it.
yeah.
That's the
Storm
only
it is
one.
another one,
I'll
or
say, listen, like
Stormfather.
all the other ones like feel pretty like it fits like Rust
Yeah,
and Ruin, right? Like
yeah.
that, you like
Lord Ruler. That was my favorite.
Lord Ruler, yeah.
Yeah,
But the one that just like it's like just Teft being like storm it,
yeah.
you're just like, all right,
Temp.
come on, y'all. Like,
Oh yeah,
but it's fun. But that's the thing, is like
yeah,
in that game because like he didn't want to swear in his books, and it's like now it's
yeah,
a fun game for all the readers to be like, oop, which swears go to which planets, and let's
yeah.
see who came from where.
And that's the other thing too is like I think part of what makes him so good is we've already talked about his subtleties, but it's also the different dialects. We talked
Mhm.
about the letters a little bit, but like the only letter I recognized was the one from Say's because I recognized
I
his
think.
yeah his tell right his tell and it's
Yeah, it says it
the
has a very
cadence.
specific cadence.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
so those are kind of like the three things with like Sanderson is like watch cadence, watch the swearing, and three times. If something is mentioned three times,
It'll still get you though.
yeah, it will. But anyway, Chad, I've had you here, not counting our testing and my own stupidity at the beginning of this for about an hour and a half now. We've been recording for about an hour and 7 minutes or so, so I do kind of want to wrap this up, and I still have
Sure.
something I want to share with you. Um,
Okay.
but
I also have some other fantasy recommendations for you,
I
by the
would
way.
love any of them because if there's one thing I've learned is that we have pretty similar tastes. Like there's a little bit of variation, like Elantris, for example, but we have very similar tastes in like what's good. So I would love
Well,
to
I'll
hear
give you good
anything.
fantasy for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
well, thank you.
Uh,
But so I kind of want to ask with something a little personal for you, Chad, because
sure.
we've talked a lot, we've gone back and forth, but for Sanderson, who's kind of your like standout character?
Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm putting you on the spot here.
dude, that's really, really hard.
Yeah,
Because for a lot of different reasons. So like, I while I appreciate what we're doing with Kaladin currently, it has I like it's so weird when I say this. Like, it's kind of fallen out. I'm a little bit in the getting the robot Shinji mode for Kaladin.
oh, okay.
But I still do like I really appreciate what we're tackling, and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
but I feel like we tackled that so very very well
yeah,
in the bridge 4 times, and Kaladin was one of my absolute favorite characters because going through all of what he went through, and he's somebody who was just like, I could give up, but I'm not. I could give up, but I'm not. And he just keeps getting beaten down, and he just keeps going. And then he does give up, and he almost fully gives up. But then he's like, no, that's not me. And like that
yeah,
character journey, and like, and what he does with Bridge 4. I mean, there's a reason I have a Bridge 4 tattoo on me right now, right?
yeah,
So this is basically like, hey, like the past, and then moving forward from the past, right? And
yeah,
then this is the ATM symbol,
yeah,
and it's looking to the future,
yeah,
right? So those are my uh so anyway, so it's like Kaladin was always like a stand up for me, but I am again a little just like, oh my god. And we got there at the very end for them a little
yeah.
bit, but you know what I mean? It's just like
No, and it's funny too because like I totally get what you're saying, but I also want to take kind of a moment to compliment Sanderson on this because Kaladin has depression. Like that's been confirmed.
Yep.
And as someone who has suffered with it for more than half of my life at this point, it's very accurate and it's very well done. So like I understand exactly where you're coming from like, yeah, it is like we've kind of done this before, but
That's why I
unfortunately,
don't want to hate on it. I
yeah.
don't, because I know,
No,
and I get it, but I'm also like,
but at the same time, it is exhausting, and that's part of it. And you know, I don't want to get too into it because that's a whole nother thing. But like I can tell you that I have actually lost friendships because of that same thing, because of the same sentiment. And I know that's not how you feel about Kaladin at all, but I just want to be very like clear that like
yeah,
I think that's the point.
right.
And I think that's something that Sanderson is so good at. And yeah, anyway, so
For sure. So let's see. I will take the cop out answer, and I will say Lopin and Wayne.
there you go.
'Cause
Hey,
they're both amazing and hilarious. No,
no,
I know. Actually, honestly, Wayne specifically. So like, Lopin also, I feel like we're gonna have like a deep Wayne-ish moment with Lopin. Like we've got a little bit of it, but
yeah.
like clear, like, you know, Lopin's gone through some stuff, but I love his like carefree attitude, and like it's so funny.
He's so
Like
likable.
the way he burned, like, what was his second ideal? Or
No,
what?
it was. I think it was his third. I think it was his
What
third.
was his third? Oh yeah,
And,
dude.
yeah, 'cause-
I literally I busted out
Oh my god!
laughing. It's just like, really?
So real quick, because we haven't really. I mean, there's so much, but we haven't talked. But like the magic system in Stormlight
Oh god, I'm dying.
is based on swearing ideals, and there's 10 different like trying to blank on the word, but it's like wings,
The factions of the Knights Radiance.
yeah, and they all like have, each of them have like 2 powers split between the 2 of them, so like each one has like overlap with another one, right?
Right.
And one of these things is like the Windrunners, which is what Lopin is a part of. They're big on like protection. That's kind of the whole thing. So traditionally it's protecting other people. And Lopin's is he has to protect other people
From himself.
from himself.
and he just, it's the most casual. And the thing too is when the third ideal is sworn or whatever,
Yeah.
like a whole big like ring, like symbol glyph of forms. It's like this huge moment. And so like they've used that for Kaladin. It's like boom, it's almost like a Super Saiyan moment, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how fucking cool it is. Like when
Yeah.
it happens for Kaladin. And Lopin's like,
Yeah.
what? He's in like the triage tent, and then he
Yeah.
makes that.
Yeah, and this is after, by the way, one of Lopin's cousins, and he has a lot of those, looks at him and swears the ideal first.
First, yeah. And he just gets it, and it's just so funny. And so like he just have his like because he like casually mentions like about like, I guess I'll protect others from me, you know?
Yeah,
It's like
boom.
Like, it's like
Yeah.
imagine if you pissed away the Super Saiyan moment in the most trivial dumb moment, and also his friend is like flipping people off. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah, it's a good it's a good thing for it's like with Goten, because Goten does it like in training, like without trying, right? It's the same type of thing. It's like you had that epic Super Saiyan moment for Goku, in this case Kaladin, and then with Lopin it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, like it's like the most comical, like undermining the moment possible, but it's done in such a way where it fits Lopin to a T. And I remember because that's in one of the novellas when that happens. It's this is really important too, but it's the one with the
Dawn Shard.
Yeah, Dawn Shard. Thank you. Yeah, so it's in Dawn Shard, which is one of the novellas, and oh my god, it's the fact that Lopin got his time to shine in that just made me so happy.
Oh, I was not expecting it at all.
Yeah,
I was definitely not expecting that.
No, I wasn't either. I was not either.
That was one that wasn't ready in audiobook, by the way, before the next book was out, so I actually like had to read that one.
Yeah.
And I was so glad I did, because otherwise I'd be like, why the hell does Rock's daughter have shard plate?
Yeah. Yeah, right?
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
so
and then also Lopin, it was wild.
So just as an aside, because Chad brought something up important, read the novellas. Like, but you have to do it like in a certain order, because otherwise they don't make sense. But a lot of Sanderson stuff, like it all relates. Every Cosmere thing comes back.
we didn't even scratch the surface of like the
No.
Arcanum Unbounded novellas, like Shadows for Silence, Six of Dusk, like all that stuff that like nobody, if you're like main Cosmere readers, you probably haven't read these, and like
Yeah.
and it's like it's teeing up other worlds and other things, and like dude, I
You get information about other shards in those too. Like
yeah,
more information than you get.
mm-hmm.
So
Dude, I'm blanking. Rieri, I think the Rieri, whatever, AVR.
yeah, AVR. Yeah.
Dude, okay, I totally thought Rison had an AVR, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not an AVR. It's
It's a little
some,
dragon thing.
yeah, it's something else. That
Um,
that is also apparently going to be really important in the future. So
but Ghostblood dude, who I'm like Maraise
yeah, Maraise has an
has an
AVR.
AVR.
And in fact, there's a really subtle thing with Maraise where like Shallan is looking into like his room or something on meeting him for the first time. And there's a lot of really subtle references that I picked up the second time after I finished all the Cosmere. Like,
Yeah.
and it's a really like good first hint that the Ghostbloods are a Cosmere-wide organization, not just
Yep.
Roshar.
Yep.
So
anyway, sorry, I could go
no,
forever.
no. I mean,
but yeah, but so sorry, tying back.
Yeah.
Wait, did I interrupt you?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
So Lopin's great, absolutely hilarious. One of the things that I really appreciate about Wayne is he's not just the comic relief character.
No,
He is for a majority.
Yes,
but he has these moments, right, where it's like Brandon is like not just using him.
There's
to
one
be
chapter.
The goof, right? Oh, remember
that one chapter that you told me about.
It's one of my
am
favorite chapters in all of the Cosmere.
That
because
one,
it's
that one hit.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
And then it just destroys you.
Oh!
It's like
in the
it's
heart.
basically like I'm gonna write a chapter in the life of Wayne, the happy-go-lucky, carefree, weird moral thief man who like, and you're like, oh ha 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 ha, and like he's stealing things and leaving other things because he's borrowing, not stealing, or trading.
Yeah, he trades. Yeah.
Oh,
he doesn't steal. He trades.
And you go through this, it's so funny this whole day, and like all the little interactions, the dialogue is great, and he's just like skipping through life, all to get to the soul-crushing reason as to why he doesn't use guns and doesn't want to kill people.
Yeah.
And then he's like clearly remorseful, but the people are just piling it on top, and you're like, oh God. Didn't expect this. This is where the roller coaster ended of that fun little journey of his day. Holy shit.
It literally starts off with whimsy, I think would be the way to describe it.
Yep.
And then it stabs you right in the feels.
Oh, yeah.
All of your feels. And Wayne is really, I think, a epitome for me of like just how deep and layered Sanderson's characterizations are across the board. And it's like that with all of them. And it's crazy. Even guys that you don't really think a whole lot about, like there's usually a lot more depth than you first see. So
yep.
I think both of those are excellent choices. To be fair, mine's Yasna. Hands down.
Yasna's great. Yasna's awesome.
You know, she is someone who, as an asexual, I never see asexuals in any media, ever. It's always, there has to be this sort of romantic relationship.
Right.
They're a love interest, whatever. And
they're like, Yasna, you should like hook, like, come on, like, we need a match or whatever. She's like, books and research and knowledge, and I'm saving the world. Fuck off, leave me alone. Like,
with Amaran, yeah. Oh god, that was funny. But no, and then like, I confess, like, when she was put with Hoyt, spoilers again, I was like, oh, really? Like, they had to give her some kind of relationship. She couldn't be like the asexual, like, you know, strong, independent woman who doesn't need no man. And then they give her perspective. And it's like, oh no. She is attracted to him for all of the reasons an asexual would be attracted to Hoyt for. She is still 100% like, this is an actual asexual relationship. And I'm sitting here like, whoa! So yeah, that solidified for me, because beforehand it was like Kelsier, despite his like psychopathic tendencies. Vin became one of my favorites.
I love Vin. Vin so much. Greatest scene.
But yeah, oh yes. End of Well of Ascension.
One of the greatest scenes in the entire Cosmere.
So great. So real quick, Chad couldn't help himself with this. He was so good about like not giving me too much, but he's like, there's one scene in this book when I got to Well of Ascension you were gonna love, and he couldn't help himself to hype it up to me, even a little bit. He was restrained, but
yeah,
it was like the one thing he was like, I don't want to like hype this up too much. And for the most part, he was great about that. But this was the one thing that he was like, you're gonna love this. And I read it, put the book down, pulled out my phone, and DM'd Chad immediately. And I believe the message was something like, holy shit, that was epic!
It's like, it is. This fucker has been such a pain in the ass for so long, and it's this moment. It's like the Superman moment, right? Like, I could kill all of you, like, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like, and it's just the like, oh, it's finally, Ellen, we're good. Like, it's all finally off. He's okay. Okay, watch this, and just. It just Koloth's sword explodes this person, and unfortunately that poor horse.
Yeah, and the horse, yeah.
But just
R.I.P. to the horse, you were the real one.
Because you built up this Lord Venture as this guy, and he's fucked up all this stuff, and he sucks, and he's been raising this blah blah blah, and he's like out.
And most infuriatingly, he had just avoided death. Like, you thought he was going to get killed off. He's like, it was set up, it was perfect. No, he freaking survives it. Like, I hate this guy. And then
you're like, okay, what epic showdown? And it was literally this moment of like, oh, you're nothing to me. And she I finally, the weights are off. Okay, cool. Boy,
which Sanderson hinted at earlier. Like, that was the best part. Is it was a payoff in multiple oh my god, Sanderson's so good. He's so good.
It's one of my absolute favorite scenes. There's so many great like things and like dialogue and relationships and all this stuff, but that is like my I'll take my shameful just love like the action moment, because it's so good. They didn't even, and he didn't even deserve the respect of a long drawn out thing. It was just watch Vin be a complete and total badass and just destroy this man like he is nothing.
It was the ultimate comeuppance, and you know we've talked about. I think we talked about this a bit off recording, right? But like, I hate people like Venture.
Oh yeah,
I really do. And to see him get just obliterated like that was chef's kiss. So satisfying.
So good.
So, oh man. Well, Chad,
right. You had something you wanted to tell me about. Sorry. And then
No. We went off, and like, thank you so much for doing this. This is, I think, going to be the longest podcast episode, and we didn't even scratch the surface.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. No, not even.
We're gonna have to, like, at some point, Chad, because like you're the only person I really talk to about the Cosmere. I'm gonna have to have you back on, and we're gonna have to do like a deep dive onto more Cosmere stuff at some point.
Sure.
I would love to.
I feel like we need to do it by like book series. That'll.
I was thinking the same thing, so we're on the same wavelength there. But so as I mentioned, this is not the traditional layout. Like, I don't normally have guests on, and I traditionally have two co-hosts who are two of my best friends. But as of the time of this recording, both of them are very busy with work and other real life things. So I started doing interviews, but one of them is actually Samurai Noodles. Does the name, let me make sure I get this right, hang on. Because I had him write this all down for me, because he's told me the story 3 times. Does the name G1 Technoforce ring any bells for you?
Yeah, oh wow.
So, G1 Technoforce.
Like 1,000,000 years ago.
And Samurai Noodles are the same person.
Okay.
And 10 years ago, he met up with you. He met up with you, and I'm going to send this via our Discord message.
Okay.
And he gave you a pair of sunglasses.
Dude!
That's That's him, and I will go in and post and
No, Evan, wait. I
add this
like, hey,
in. But
recognize him a million times, dude. I have those glasses still.
yeah,
The kids have them. Hey, fun fact, dude. I've literally because this happened because we've met more than once.
yeah,
And I had complimented him. I think it was at SGC. I complimented on those glasses,
yeah,
and then he found another pair and gave it to me, and I was so genuinely excited. I was like, dude, that's
yeah.
rad as hell. Those literally lived on my desk, on my work desk, through Screw Attack, through getting acquired by Rooster Teeth, to going all the way down like to Austin. They were on my desk every single day, and then I was on the spot, and I had to like whip together a Cyclops costume because I was like, what are we gonna do? Literally,
Yeah.
that was one of the inspirations, because I was like, I need to do a like. So I was with Todd, who's bald, and he was like, I'm gonna get put on a suit and be in a wheelchair. I'll be Professor X. And I was like, what can I put together? And I
Yeah.
looked at those glasses and I went, I bet I could put together a Cyclops outfit. And in a day, I put together that Cyclops outfit, and it was all because of those glasses. Dude, no way. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So Samurai is one of my best friends. I've known him for 10 years, over 10 years now. We met when I was 14, so 17 years ago,
Hmm.
maybe longer. And he, it's so funny because he was always like singing your praises. And in fact, the reason why I even got to know you at all, like, and become familiar with your work, was because of him. Like, he introduced me to Screw Attack, and um, I remember when you took over for like Hard News. So I that's where I really got to know you for, and then I moved over to Death Battle, of course, like everybody else. But when I told him that, hey, I want to ask Chad to be on the podcast, he was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to be there. I'm like, well, we're going to be talking Cosmere. He's like, ah. So, but I did tell him, I'm like, I wanted to tell you about this story. And so for those that don't know, and I'll put the picture up. But yeah, one of my best friends met Chad, and he's got the full story here, which was at, it was during a, Angry Video Game
Video
Nerd.
game nerd signing
Yeah, in
out
Next
in
Gen in
California.
LA. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And that was in 2012, so 10 years ago. And it's just kind of weird how, like, I don't know how it all comes together, because, like, I don't, I've kind of got to know you through Hang Time's channel personally. I was
Mhm.
a fan, but
Right.
we started talking through Hang Time, and now you're here, and it's so weird how that all works out. And I had to bring that up because I knew it would be a great surprise. So
Dude, it is. That's crazy. So
yeah,
like, here's the thing, like I met like a million people,
yeah,
right, doing this job, right? Like, and I was like, oh man, that G1 name sounds really familiar.
yeah. So
But
he,
the
yeah,
second you showed me that picture, I was like, oh my God,
yeah,
that's because I had never forgot that. Like the fact that I complimented his glasses, and then he remembered, and then had another pair ready. And by the way, they have a little fish tails at the
yeah.
very end of them. They're yellow now. I spray painted them to be Cyclops, but and then the kids have them. But yeah, that is crazy small world
Yeah,
like scenario right now. That's wild.
yeah, and
He should have me on another podcast, like a normal one where he's on too, so we can catch up and joke around.
oh, and I know Shoshima would also love to be on. I just, I never want to insist, but I would love to. We would love to have you back. Chad, again, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and time flew by. I looked at the time and I went, "Oh crap! I gotta like let Chad go." So, and then we went on for like another 15 minutes. So,
Dude, you get me with the Cosmere, man. I can't not. So,
well, man, I told you I was gonna try not to fanboy too much, but you are legitimately like one of the nicest people I've ever met online. You and Grayson both, and I've never met you in person, but one day I would really like to. For
same, man.
sure.
I would love to as well. You've been super cool. Again, dude, thank you for reading as fast as you do, and for being such a sweet and supporter of like both Hang Time, and then also like my stream, and like, dude, it's like, I don't know, it's all the good vibes. I'm getting all emotional. So
Chad, thank you again. That means a lot coming from you. You are somebody who, I don't look up to a lot of people, but you are someone who is, you've done so much. you could have a big head, but you don't. And the fact that you reached out to me, who I'm pretty awkward, especially online. Like I do much better one-on-one in person, but like online, I often, you see me in your chat in hang time. I don't chat like a whole lot. I do try to, like communicate, but I don't know what to say. I'm very awkward like that. So it's been really cool getting to know you, and
You too, man.
I really look forward to having you on the podcast again in the future.
For
So
sure.
thanks, and hopefully I'll have fixed up a couple things. I'm like looking and seeing, oh, I messed this up, and hopefully I won't mess up the audio the first time next time.
No
But
worries.
anyway, guys, you can catch Chad at Chad James RT on Twitter, and then you can also catch him on Twitch, Chad_James. He
Currently in a
streams
Pokemon
Tuesdays.
Nuzlocke run. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you. My bad.
No. No, you're good. You're good. Tuesdays and Thursdays, right, is kind of your regular thing.
That's trying to get back to that.
And is that around? I want to say it's 9 p.m. Central is when you normally
between
start,
8
right?
and 9 p.m. Central.
Okay, cool. And yeah, again, you know who he is. He's internet famous Chad James.
Oh, God.
And
You
this
snuck it in at the end.
Sorry, Chad. Hey, at least
That's
I didn't
fine.
call you Chad motherfucking James.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
gonna send a clip. Chris Kokinos is the one who ruined that for me. He was our sound engineer at RoosterTeeth. Anyway, he'll be very pleased when I send him the clip.
All right. Well, I'm happy to have you again. And
Yep.
This has been another episode of the Lost One podcast. Thank you guys for watching.
Bye.
Bye.